Okay, I'll keep this quick here for everyone attending the webinar. First of all, thanks for joining on a Friday afternoon. I know we had a lot of registrants sign up for this webinar because it is such an interesting and kind of a hot topic. So again, thank you for joining Bluestone Analytics and the team. We are very honored to have Matt Richardson from the Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative, one of our partners that uses Bluestone's technology, and we are able to see how our technology kind of plays a role in supporting Matt and his team in some of the investigations that they do. So Matt decided that we all agreed that sharing a case study of an actual true case that took place would be helpful for other investigators who are working in the same type of environment to see and understand. And although it may seem a little bit kind of a dark topic and tough for some of us to process, we understand the nature of this. I promise you that it has a happy ending to it. So without further ado, let me highlight real quick, if you have any questions, we are going to hold those for the end. So please, if you have any questions, just add them to the chat box. We do have panelists from the Bluestone team. If you have questions for Bluestone, they will answer those in there for you. If you have questions for Matt specifically, I will compile those questions and we will have time to answer those at the end. So please drop them in the chat. All right, without further ado, Matt, take it away.
Well, thank you, Ryan, and thank you to the Bluestone team, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in today. My name is Matt Richardson. I'm the Senior Advisor on Intelligence and Child Safety with the Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative. We're an NGO headquartered in North Carolina, the United States of America, but we operate internationally. Before I begin, I'm not a law enforcement personnel, but I work in concert with them very closely. And frankly speaking, I've been mentored, trained, and tutored and taught by some of the best and brightest minds in this space. A lot of time and care went into making me able to do what I do and frankly, who I am. So it's a pleasure today to be able to join you. As my friend Ryan mentioned, the topic is dark. And I know that we'd expect that based on the title and the tagline and the learning objectives. But I do assure you that where there's darkness, there's light. And I'm going to bring you down a bit. I assure you I'll bring you back up. And I won't leave you in a sullen, dark space on a Friday afternoon today, okay? I'll start with a disclaimer. We are going to be discussing a real investigation of a violent child predator sourced to the dark web. No, he's not a dark web predator. That doesn't exist. There's no mall predator or bus stop predator. The dark web, however, is a frequent environment that these people will spend their time. This investigation began in the dark web via the Darkblue tool. There's no nudity and there's certainly no child sexual abuse material or CSAM at any point in this discussion, but the language is incredibly disturbing. Please do ensure that we're not viewing this in the company of anyone who did not opt to participate. So, maybe not having people with a clear line of sight or within earshot of what we discussed today. Our overview will be as follows. We're going to start with a dark net exercise in lead generation, or in layman terms, field speak, targeting. And we're going to leverage creative search within the Darkblue tool set. We will pivot from the dark web to the clear web. The dark web will be where we observe the criminality, we target and we identify them. The open source intelligence, OSINT, side of it will be where we begin to try to identify and create jurisdictions and locations. We'll pivot from there into a social media investigation. We'll wrap today with some points on the impacts that this can have on people in the field, me included, and just a few things I've learned for resiliency in the field and ensuring longevity in this, because there aren't enough people doing this. So I'd like to kind of wrap with that. The case that we're looking at here is a violent child predator sourced from the dark web via Darkblue. How this all began was I was approached, me and my organization, by law enforcement for support on an operation targeting the types of criminals that would frequent the dark web. Our objectives were as follows: locate target-rich, in layman's field speak, hunting grounds. These are target-rich environments. For example, CSAM forums. CSAM is child sex abuse material, formerly known as child pornography, no longer known as such. How to generate high-value targets, HVTs, based on severity of their offending. And I'll talk more about the categories that you see in there. And not only find people with sufficient criminality, but also that are actionable and investigatable. And we'll come back to that. And crafting offender topologies. That's not a profile. That is a psychiatrist thing, the BAU, Criminal Minds. Topologies are a bit different. We will get into that. We also were asked to look at creating backstop personas that law enforcement could use for undercover operations. Quick side note, as a civilian, I'm not law enforcement. A few things are totally forbidden for me. I have been trained to, for the most part, avoid any exposure to child sex abuse material, CSAM, directly. And number two is I don't chat. I leave that to the professionals in law enforcement, but we do help get them to the right places with the right personas, targeting the right people. Parameters include egregious types, strong evidence of criminality, and importantly, they must be fresh, so they can't be 7 or 8 years old. We are challenged to find ones that are more recent and are existing, clear and present threats to public safety. A quick primer on CSAM categorizations, the severity rankings. So A is the most egregious of them. This is sexual activity between adults and children, children with other children, or with animals, which would include bestiality, or is known as zoo or zoophilia. Any elements of sadism, torture. It may include penetration, but it may not, depending on these additional factors over to the right. These are mitigating factors. Category B, non-penetrative sexual activity like heavy petting. And then C is CSAM doesn't fall into either, but again, when you factor in these additional factors, like we have an offender who is seriously, seemingly threatening to abduct a child, then they go from like a C or a non-existent to an A pretty quick. So these are all very dynamic. There's no two that are the same. The only one thing that's the same in my experience doing this is anytime you embark on this, you just have to look at this really deep, and you have to look into the abyss a bit, and you have to know I've accepted the mission and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. They can't look away. The kids can't, so I can't run away. But I am always aware that I'm always going to be a little different. Every one of them, even today, what I'm doing now feels like the first time all over again. So I'm accepting of the fact I'm going in, I'm ready. I've got my battle suit on. There's never an easy one. My target was hurtcore. Hurtcore is a genre that is rather infamous. It's the worst of the worst. One infamous, fairly well known, it's been covered in the mainstream media, is a production named Daisy's Destruction. It depicted the violent abuse of a 18-month-old girl. That film, for years, a few years, was thought to be myth and urban legend because it was so egregious, and it was revealed to be real. And it was actually produced by an Australian named Peter Scully, with No Limits Fun was the name of his production company. So these are the types that I target, and we are going to target a person that was involved in that particular genre of CSAM today. So a quick primer here. Darkblue is a subscription darknet tool that indexes and searches content on the dark web the way Google would the clear web. The dark web is largely a disorganized space that affords anonymity, where you have to have very specific keywords and kind of know what you're looking for. Darkblue actually brings the Google search engine style interface over to the dark web, which is a pretty incredible thing. We're going to look at targeting these offenders, how we construct the keywords or the creative search that you would have seen in the promotion for this, how to take keywords and create queries. Queries, insert keywords are the meat that feed a query. And the saying would be like this: garbage in, garbage out. The better we can construct the question to ask any tool, the better we get. We're going to look at how to collect artifacts and profiling intel. And then we're going to look at how we prepare for phase 2, the open source intelligence. Quick primer, anyone who's uninitiated, OSINT is open source intelligence. That's openly, publicly available information. It may be old or hard to find, but it's open and public. It really requires the skilled and coordinated use of tools, methodologies, and good old-fashioned gumshoe, beat cop simple intuition. A lot of critical thinking, a lot of quick pivoting. The darknet, as I mentioned, unindexed, it's hard to search notoriously. It does house its fair share of criminality because of the additional layers of anonymity that it affords. HurtCore, as I mentioned, is the nastiest of the CSAM forums. I won't read aloud what you see in the definition. You can look away if you wish. Just knowing I think that it's the worst, it's the youngest, and it's the worst of the criminality imaginable at this point. The process or the methodology, to me, involves sitting and I do pen and paper and I write my keywords out. I'll take us through this in the next slide or two. Pivoting from there, once I have keywords and some search queries, I'm over to Darkblue and I'm searching the dark web for the types of criminals and forums of which I would target. At that point, I'm looking for artifacts. Artifacts are basically pieces of intel that can help us identify, hopefully locate a target. Usernames, breach data, it could be Bitcoin wallets, email addresses, servers, hashes, and so on and so forth. Darkblue will give me any of that if it's there to be had in one shot. If sufficient criminality is established, we gather the evidence, we proceed to OSINT. We collect the artifacts and we prepare for the second wave. If not, we go back to Darkblue and we do another round of search. If there's too many results, like the name's too common, there's 33 million hits, let's say a username or an email, it might not be a go unless we have other artifacts that we can rack it against. If that's the case, then we go back to Darkblue. If it's actionable, so there's some results but not too many, so nothing or too many are kind of hard. But if we end up in the sweet spot, then we go on to the OSINT social media, and then from that point, we craft our reports for law enforcement. Language here is brutal. I'm not going to read aloud the examples. I'm going to let you read or look away, up to you, but I will read the recipe components. So if I'm looking in dorking is just searching in a way and asking questions in a way that computers and tools understand. So I might say age and sex act. Okay. I might say boy and petting. That would be ideal for a non-preferential offender type. Age plus gender plus sex act if they're preferential, because gender is where the preference would be. And then the other I might look at would be a criminal activity, like a gender in a criminal act. So girl and abduct, girl and school bus follow home. These are the types of keywords, but subsequent strings that I compose and go in and search with, where I'm able to get to where I'm trying to go. Okay, so dark web in of itself, this is actually a screenshot from my personal the Onion router, which is what dark web, it's one of the two operating or browsers that you can use to access it. So I've been trained pretty good on this, and I have here a collection of really nice starting points, marketplaces, search engines, and so on and so forth. I know the ways of the dark web. it is still a really, it takes an inordinate amount of time and a lot of psychological bandwidth, because I'm starting from scratch every time I do this, and I'm having to try a whole bunch of really gross keywords and search strings, and some are hit and some are missed. So I'm losing time and I'm losing precious bandwidth, starting from here, even with the training and having a pretty friendly landing space. It's a big difference when I work within Darkblue. Darkblue affords me the ability to do less and get more, and time is of the essence. So if we're knowing that we have kids in jeopardy in harm's way, and we have bad actors that really need to be removed from society, kids that need to be rescued, why do I want to spend 4 hours, a half a day, or a day or two even finding where they might be, when I can go? And that is what this has allowed me to do. This is a screenshot of a search that I did in Darkblue. I really kept, this is a pretty basic search. I kept 2 words, hurtcore and snuff. Snuff means murder. And I got, in the past month, 10,000 hits plus. And that's not a fun thing. Overwhelming. Now, some of them are spam, some are scams, some are real. Instead of having to take days to find this, I'm able to get you here like that quick, just like you would if you Google Louisiana deep fried chicken. That's one of my favorites. I am a foodie. Here, I get it pretty quick, and I get previews of what's in the text. And I get these tags that tell me what I'm going to find in there, which mean I know by eyeball which ones are not worth looking into versus which ones need a second look and a harder look. So it saves a lot of time, and I can't tell you enough the bandwidth. I don't have to accidentally bump into images and videos and any of that, because that's not part of what I do. This tool saves me from that. And more importantly, gets me to the targets quicker and the kids. If I drill down a bit, you'll see at the bottom, I didn't go into a deep dive on this, but just a few of the features here. You can see in here, without having to go too deep, the types of keywords that are to be found in that forum, and that's good enough for me, for my mission right there. I won't go into them, but a quick glance will tell you there's a whole lot of bad stuff up in there. My team with the ATI is comprised of a variety of experts. I'm an OSINT, Darkweb. I'm a targeter. I generate leads and I do targeting. I don't work as well with some of the technical artifacts like servers and hashes and the like. But see, I can go in there and grab that and parse them out to my team. And I have crypto experts. I have cyber forensic experts. I have locators. So this just allows me to go bing, bang, and boom, and rock and roll and lock and load kind of thing. Some of the meta tags, I've obfuscated a lot of language there. But you see what this is? This is the stuff that people like me really need, because I can see exactly what's being said and by whom, and what they claim to do, what they are doing. The language, the user handles, the vernacular, the linguistic patterns are like, that's my bread and butter. And I don't have to go and find that and spend 6 hours and run into really bad visual content needlessly. This spares me that stuff. I do have a selection of some of the forum posts, the written content. So I knew when I saw that, ladies and gentlemen, friends, I'm like, okay, it's time to go. Any guy like this, based on what I already knew, has to go, or at least to the very best of my ability. I can't look away or run away. Gotta get done, or I gotta give it the very best I got. This man talks about abducting children, keeping child sex slaves, kidnapping them, keeping in your basement, disposing of them. I won't read everything. I'll leave this just for a second. Don't want to look, don't. It's there if you wish to see. I do apologize, kind of. There's more redactions in this than a 1980s American Air Force UFO document, but it is needed, okay? And we see themes of kidnapping, captivity, sexual offenses, and worse, with specific examples of how to do it, target, get away with it, and what to do when. In a pretty blunt forum heading here, how would you snuff or murder? So there's just absolutely, at this point, we're getting so close. I'm just like, okay, I think that, by the way, this was a lengthy investigation, so we're not going through every single minutia step. There were something like 800 posts by this guy. I had to read them like 5 times from the beginning to the end. 1, 2, 3, 750, 779, 800 to begin to get to where I was, because it requires careful study of the language. So that's a small example. So in wrapping on that part, so at this point, we went in organically at the request of law enforcement to find the worst of the worst, who they are and where they hang out. The forums I won't discuss, those are active investigations. The individual here, he's on a hurt core forum dedicated to violent abuse of children. The attention, there's a lot of this, but some are worse than others. So what really got my attention was his proclivity to abduct and harm children. So he's active in a really, really bad forum. But I have no reason to doubt in my mind, if he hasn't already, given the opportunity, he would cross over from online stuff and offending over to the, the physical realm. So he does have the propensity to be a crossover offender. And I, again, have just no doubt that he would, if he hasn't. He's interesting in that he prefers very young children, but he's also interested in adult, specifically Asian women. He does claim to have physically raped a young Korean exchange student at one point. Gender is non-preferential when they're young, but that's common when they're young because we haven't really developed yet. So there aren't strong male and female characteristics at that point of development. He does, now importantly, he posts at all hours and there's no rhyme or reason, there's no real pattern. So this leads to me in my notes, my handwritten notes, in the moment notes my friend taught me. I think the guy's white collar. He's educated. The way he speaks, some of the things he writes about when it's not about sex and fetishes are that of a man with an education. His ability to post whenever he wants and how often he wants would tell me the guy's not working 12 hours a day in a factory in a crane. He's probably a white collar professional. My guess was he was a fluent, middle class at least, but more likely upper class or affluent. His fetishes, I'll leave these up. This is important because when we cross over the open source intelligence and social media, what's true on the dark web will be true here. So you start to bring the dark web, unknown person with the one you're starting to know, and they start to cross over and they align. So his fetishes are fairly specific, as you can read here if you choose to do so. Now we'll pivot over and we'll look at this point through Darkblue, sourcing from the dark web. We have established sufficient criminality. We have a guy that it would seem at minimum is sharing in violent CSAM, possibly producing, but definitely sharing, and who expresses a consistent and rather intense interest and the abduction and physical crossover offending of children. Criminality is a check at this point. And the freshness is there. This is not 2012. This is like going back months at most. Now we see the open source intelligence, or the OSIN. This is a Google search of the username from the dark web, which again, so if I saw 231 million hits, I'm like, darn it. If I saw nothing, or there were like 4 and it was all spam and nothing, I'm like, ugh. Now, mind you, we do have the IPs and we have the hashes. Those are alternate routes of investigation. I'm going to take you through my journey, usernames, emails, and the like. When I saw 231 results, I was like, giddy up. Maybe we can get them. Now, a search through a popular open source intelligence tool and OSINT tools, what's my name.app, reveals a lot of accounts that are pretty consistent with other known offenders that seek child abuse material on the dark web. There's certainly porn accounts. There's others that are consistent for sure. DeviantArt's one. And we see some social media in here. So at this point, I'm going to say I was cautiously optimistic. And at this point, I still remember as if it was like this morning. I remember pausing and breathing and going, okay, let's get it together. Because your mind's going like this. It's like a fight or flight, like a trauma response. So you're like, okay, I have to be the best one in the room. I can't be the tired one. I can't be the lazy one. I can't be the disorganized one. I have to be the best in the room because this guy's not going to make it easy. So I remember I collected myself and I thought, okay, strategically, what's the next steps? So I started with some of the social media, the YouTube. So what we are looking at here is these look rather innocuous and banal, but these are really short clips of children playing and doing regular kid things. And that's a catalog. There's like 11 subscribers or something, and there's 38 views for them. The videos are very short and they're just doing banal things. But given what we know about the guy, that's what this is. That's like from the YouTube, and he is holding a revolver to the heads of 2 very small, probably kindergarten age children here with a pretty creepy looking filter. And some more of the catalogs. So they will pose, twirl, the close-up of the dress, because some of the people like to see the clothing. Much the same here. So I'm looking at that and I'm going, if you're that dumb that you were going to go out there on the open web and do this, I'm not letting you go. Like, you're mine. I'm going to drag, in my mind, this is what I said, literally, remember, I'm going to drag you out by the throat. Your anonymity's gone. You're hiding in the dark web. I'm dragging you out by the throat. Then I look at the video search, and again, it's consistent. We see themes of sexual torture, abductions, abuse and being used, degradation, violence. And these all hold so much water with the man that we already know. The difference here is on the clear web, they're adults. Asian girls being abused, and he's got the thing he mentioned about the Korean exchange student. So see, the news starts to tighten a little bit by a little bit. Very unique username with all those things I mentioned. He's also into serial killers and uncensored crime scene photos. Pictured here is Hillside Stranglers. Pictured here are signs of bondage, and he is extremely into BDSM. So it's like check, 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 check. Smoking guns are rare in my lane in this space, but the totality of the circumstances is the measure of which we rack and stack and rank our leads. And this fellow is really rapidly climbing up in terms of, he's really bad, evidence of criminality, but that crossover here, this guy can be gotten. I'm growing very confident at this point. And then we find this one. So Zek's Hamster account has some of the same fetishes listed. BDSM, I won't read them aloud, all of them, slaves, so on. But he actually has a location this time, you see? And he has an initial down the bottom left. So I'm like, how about that? You know? Back to Google, you see the Reddits and Twitter. So I jump into there and I see the Twitter. and I see Seattle. So I see Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, Pacific Northwest. And I see a full, an initial with a last name for the first time. I don't know if you can imagine. I don't even know if I could explain how I felt. So much of this is unspeakable in terms of the content, but the emotions that will race through you. To me, I think I felt a hardened sense of like ironclad, steely resolve. Now I'm going to go until it's done. The next step I went was the Instagram, and there's nothing here except he follows one person. It turns out that that person is rather close to him. It's either a wife or a girlfriend. I believe his wife. I'm like, wow. So I go and I look at that account, and I find through his initials, his real name, which he leaked on Twitter and on Hamster. She follows him because he's using the same ones that are all linked to his Darkweb name, Sadodad. And then I go and I look her up, and she's in Seattle. Yeah, they're both professionals. It turns out I was right about that. I'm not always right. This time I was. And I find his personal Instagram, and his 21 followers. And now I know it's going. I still remember it like it was this morning. Checking out his name in Seattle, I start to find his professional hits, including his LinkedIn. Now at this point, I'm looking at it and I'm like, could it really be? Yeah, you can. That's what I always thought these guys would look like on the dark web. And there certainly are creepy, grainy looking photos of them, but they are not demons. They are not phantoms. They're not supermen. They are astonishingly, they're crafty in some ways, but they aren't supermen. It's a fallacy. There are obviously going to be criminals with genius level IQs like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, but they make a lot of mistakes. They like to think that they're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and they get overconfident. And to be honest, they're so sexually motivated that they're not thinking logically and rationally, and they make mistakes. That would have been what we'd have expected. And that's what they want us to think. It's not true. As I come up onto here now, we go from here and we go to things like this that I get shared once in a blue moon from my colleagues in law enforcement when we get one. I don't always hear often. In fact, I don't. Where can we begin to even begin to feel good about this? I shared a lot of dark stuff with you. I'm going to be honest. I'm a professional in a volunteer capacity within the space. I do this because I believe in the mission, protecting kids, getting bad actors out of society and legally incarcerated. That's the MO. I seek not fame, fortune, or recognition because I don't really care about any of it. For me as a parent, the thing that gives me some solace in this, as dark as all that was, is that despite the myths that are crafted in the media and Hollywood at some points, any and all of these people are vulnerable. Everyone slips. And if we're working together, so for example, my friends and partners with Darkblue, my colleagues with ATII, my buddies, my brothers and sisters from law enforcement, if we're working in concert, motivated and being professional, none of them are ever safe, this guy included. So what came of that, man? You're probably interested, and you should be. I got these aren't the exact ones, but I got photos like this from the cavalry going to the man's home. And I wouldn't say celebratory because I don't remember the last time I went high or had a cowboy moment. To me, it's somber. I feel good. things are just a little better today for, you know, the sacrifices that I made, my team made, my partners make. But at the same time, you can't discount those because they don't come every day. And when they come, they do deserve to be celebrated in your own way. My own way is very subdued, reflective, introspective. What did I do well? What did I do wrong? How could I learn and do better? So it's like you win the Super Bowl in a way, and then the next day you're already thinking, how can I win the next one? That's kind of my mind. I don't really take too long of downtime. I always unpack and think lessons learned and who's next. And that's as much as I can show you of them. That one's been adjudicated, but I've been asked not to share anything publicly on them beyond what I am. My belief is that they're looking at him for more investigations, but that's the real dude. And again, I told you I had to redact a lot of stuff, but you can see clearly he's a real human. He is not that. He's that. I get asked all the time, what's the profile of these guys? I'm like, there isn't one. It's just anyone around us. My personal experience with these guys is they tend to be more of the affluent type. Like typically there's always going to be people that aren't going to fit the mold, but typically it's, for me, it's been Caucasian males, usually of the older range. They're not teens. Typically they're more older, more sophisticated in that sense. And this guy is pretty emblematic of what I've experienced within the field, you know, getting really kind of close and personal with these type topologies of criminal. Now, I get asked about this a lot, and I'm happy to share. The impacts of this can't be understated. If you're in the field or aspiring to be in it, the reality of this is that if you do the work, it changes you. It doesn't matter how tough you think you are. If you think you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, you're lying to yourself if you think it's not going to have an impact. I went through over 2 years of doing this stuff without anything, but eventually it catches up to you. And it's fine. If we don't talk about that and aren't open about it, we're not going to remain in the field. And we need everyone in the field that can do the job there. Your resiliency is very important. The impacts on me have been, I've had like PTSD symptoms, and I've made self-sacrifices. You have ups and downs and some days, but at the end of the day, in my mind, if you have a strong family unit, you look after yourself. If you appreciate your limitations and they can shift and change as you go, you may have new boundaries. You maybe not be able to play the game the same way, but you can stay in the lane in the space. If you change or, you know, augment the way in which you engage with it, it can extend your time in the field. And it's full disclosure. I'm going to share with you right now. I was like this close, not that long ago from writing my resignation letter. Like, I'm out. I'm going to focus on other aspirations and endeavors. I'm not just saying this because I don't do that. That's not my way. I am real. The tool here, Dark Pursuit, Darkblue, helped me stay in, because a lot of the stuff that was banging me up, it spared me that. And it took things that took a long time and made them quick, and it gave me more hope. I wasn't exposed to things that I didn't have to be for my space in this lane, in the mission. One such way I'll point out is, and I love this, an image blur tool, which you can see here. And you can see, see the language. That's the stuff I really need. But I don't have to see anything. And this actually allows me to unblur, blur max, or unblur altogether, or I can choose the degree of blurring. So if I need to see something in it, validate, yeah, that is the right type of thing I'm looking for. Or if there's like a, you know, a coffee mug, maybe I can unblur, maybe like to zoom in and see the mug, or an insignia, like my ATII here, anti-human trafficking shirt. Things that might help me identify someone, but I don't have to view the stuff that's only for law enforcement and prosecutors. So that in of itself is a tremendous saver of bandwidth and my own personal wellness. Before I continue, I really do want to leave you with, bring you back up a bit. I'm a parent. Some of us on the call are, some of us are protectors as well, like I am, and you are too. if you have children in your life or teens, or it could be nieces, nephews, cousins, or anyone you care about, and this feels like it's completely overwhelming, it really isn't, I swear. I'm a father of 2 children, both boys, both coming of age, that are right in that sort of risk threshold in terms of their years of age. It would be an entirely separate topic on like keeping our families safe. But one piece of advice I'll give right now, super easy. Be present and engaged in our children's lives, because the kids that I see typically targeted, unless it's by family when they're young, familial, but the ones that are targeted online that we're afraid of, they rely on kids looking to have needs filled that aren't being met in real life. So love and affection, romance, having friends. Oh, if they do a really good job in a test or an assignment at school or a volunteer endeavor, recognizing those things and celebrating them, speaking with them, putting the phone down. How was your day? It's these little things, open lines of communication. It's realistic conversations. So with my son, I say, dude, it's not if you make mistakes, it's when you do. I can tell you until I'm blue in the face not to do things. Some of them I hope you don't, but I know some of them you're going to, and it is okay if you do. When you make mistakes, you come to me, I'll believe you. I'll always love you forever. I will not punish you. I will not take all your tech away. I will help you fix the problem. But I'm always here and no judgment, man. And if our kids know they can come to us, these bad actors have sufficiently less to work with, because those types of kids with that type of support from family, friends, and so on, do not make the best targets. They're confident and they're supported, and people notice if something's wrong. Then all of this that we're looking at here, like, you're winning if you do that. And none of those are hard things to do. Easy to say, long day at work, we're burned out and fried, I've been there and all that. We're always going to have an off day. But if we remain largely present, engaged with our children, we have the upper hand here. And I look me in the eye, I don't lie. I mean that verbatim. That's factually true. So what we've done today, we're going to wrap and then we'll open up for Q&A. We've looked at darknet lead generation, or good old-fashioned targeting, and how we leverage creative search to fuel that part of the process. Pivoting from the dark web over to the open source intelligence investigation, that would be the Googling and the websites and the accounts they hold, over to the social media, which in this case was where we created a personal identification in a jurisdiction, and talking about the impacts and resiliency in the field, where we kind of closed there. Before I hand it over, my friends from Bluestone will have contact info for all of y'all, should you have any questions with them. My contact information is on the screen. My email's provided, as well as my LinkedIn link. Do feel free, please, to connect and connect with me on LinkedIn. I always like making new friends. That's an open and standing offer. And if you have questions, I'll help with the ones we can get to today. Otherwise, I'm happy to field them after the fact, be it by email or however we wish. And now I'll hand it back to you, Corey or Ryan, whoever would like to pick up the ball, and I'll stop my screen share.
Hey, Matt, absolutely amazing story. You do such a great job at presenting, and I know this was a harder topic. So I hope the reality sets in with everyone that this is something that does exist, but there are people out there who are trying to suppress these types of issues and address them to the best of our ability. I'm real quick just going to answer this because it's been asked a lot. Yes, the recording will be available. It will be sent out either later today or Monday for viewing if you came in late or if you were unable to attend. Matt, I do have some few questions for you. If we don't get to all of them, I will certainly send them to you and connect you with that person who asked the question. The first one, and you already kind of mentioned this on your last slide there, is considering the work that you do in this space, what strategies do you have in place to protect your mental health?
Great question. I love that one, and I'm super happy to share. Thank you for the question. It took me a little while to get there. I remember I took a really hard shot, full disclosure. I didn't really know what was going on. And I spoke with a friend of mine in the field, and it was a PTSD type of reaction. That was the first time I really had to think about self-care. So for me, everyone's different. I have friends that do MMA. I have friends that do Lego. For me, actually, I took up gardening, believe it or not, of all things. I took up gardening. I enjoy the fresh air and the quiet, and I enjoy taking care of the plants and caring for them. It feels gentle and nurturing. And the other, I don't work when I don't feel I'm in the right space. So if I don't feel like I can do this safely up here, then I might wait and try another night. Um, I know my sort of triggers or my weak points. So exhaustion for me is one of, if I'm really not tired, but exhausted, not my night. If I get blur in my vision or butterflies in my stomach, there's things like that that I recognize and I go, this is not going to be my day for anything. So I pay attention and I respect it. Believe it or not, I play a little Tetris. Tetris is really good for if you're feeling off, it can reground you because you're still cognitively engaged in doing something tactile. And then, I mean, other than that, I suppose I just enjoy time with the family. So if I'm feeling a little off, I park that and I just enjoy seeing my children do like innocent child everyday playing and stuff. That to me is really therapeutic.
Thanks, Matt. I know the other thing we had mentioned as well, and we get a lot of feedback here at Bluestone from our partnerships with nonprofit organizations doing this type of work. And that dark shield feature is an amazing technology that we're hopefully going to have in production here soon to blur out some of those images. That way those don't have to be burned into your skull, but allow you to continue to operate in that environment. Matt, I want to move on to another question here. Someone did ask if it was the specific words that this actor was using that tipped you off, or was it the variety and topics that of their post specifically? Like, what was really the smoking gun that tipped you off?
Well, you know what got me to what led me to him was the creative search. So it's combining keywords. So this word with this word and this really disgusting, act. And then that didn't work. So then I tried taking a word out and trying a new one or narrowing back my search. So the way I found them, frankly, was by stitching together 3 or 4 gross words. And then I started to find forums. And when I found the forums and I could see a username and I could see him popping up again and again, and what he was saying was bad. When I went and did a search with him and I found like 800 results, I'm like, okay, this guy's really invested in it. So it really was the beginning of it was creative search and knowing what words to use. And then it was just good old fashioned gumshoe, beat cup, simple stuff. I'm not a tech person. I don't hack devices. I hack humans. So I manually went in and figured them out, and I found the posts, and I just read them again and again and again until I started to bring it home.
Matt, the next question here is, and I obviously want to hear your response, and I know I could probably chime in from the Bluestone side to this one as well, but do you create sock puppet accounts when looking through Predator's social media accounts?
Every time. Operational security or OPSEC is very important. So off shot over here, I have a VDM, a virtual laptop set up as a contained unit. I have a burner phone that I use for apps that you require a phone for, and I use SOC accounts, and I use a VPN. So yeah, I never, ever, ever, ever use my real social media. Why? We can make them alert that they're being looked at. Even worse, they might become aware that we're looking at them and then hunt us back. You don't want to see people you may know or friends of friends popping up and they're your targets. It's really also mentally pretty disturbing. It had happened to me earlier in my career before I was trained to the point I am now. So every single time I use a SOC account and a VPN, and depending on the investigation, I'll go over to the VDM and do the self-contained as well.
Awesome answer. And we get that on our end a lot with our technology, and we try to identify some leads essentially. And then when we move into the discovery phase of our OSINT investigations, we certainly don't want to go in with our personal accounts and sometimes our personal equipment or IP address or anything like that. So A technology that we also have here at the Bluestone side is our misattributable virtual machine called Dark Pursuit, which has that blurred image feature in it, or will here shortly, that allows people to go into that environment, look at some of these sites without having to save any of those artifacts to your actual device. It puts you in a virtual machine for your safety, for your protection. So if that's something that you or your organization is interested in, feel free to reach out to us on that on the Bluestone team, and we can discuss more. Matt, this one I'm curious about your answer on as well. I assume yes, but I also want to add how long. But it's are children stalked before being kidnapped? And if so, is there like a time range that goes along with that?
Okay, good question. First, it can happen, but stranger abductions of children are incredibly rare. I grew up in the 80s and it was rare then, although there's a hysteria around it. It's really rare now. CCTV cameras, kids are less free range. We find it happens less and less and less. If a child were to be kidnapped, maybe the way I'll answer the question is, can they do reconnaissance and do they use social media? And yeah, there was a case, it might have been 10 years ago, but there was a guy in Michigan that was using creeping the parents' social media to do reconnaissance on the kids and snatching them out of their rooms and stuff. It's still comparatively rare. Usually when there's a stranger abduction, it's a crime of opportunity, wrong place, wrong time. With that said, what can we do about it? Be careful of what you share. So we don't want to overshare on social media. This doesn't mean we have to be paranoid. When I don't do a lot of social media, but when I do posts with the kids, I typically keep them in a locked family group, and there's like 17 people, like my grandma on it, and they can see it's the first day of school, know the teacher's name. What we can do is just be careful, take care of what you share, don't overshare. Importantly, adults are sometimes worse, people of my age. If we overshare, even if it's about us, we can expose our children to risks. So we always want to watch what we share about ourselves, not just our children or our families in general, because they may find us to get to the kiddos. So it's just, to me, it's common sense. What I always say is, if you went to the food court at your local mall, would you go and tell like 500 people eating KFC and McDonald's in the food court, hey, I'm gonna go for a jog alone on that dark trail. I'll be out there from 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock tonight alone? Probably not. It's dangerous and it's kind of silly. So if you wouldn't say it to 300 or 400 people in the food court out loud, then why say it to 4 billion people that are online? And if you kind of go with that and tighten that up, we don't have to worry about our kids being stalked on social media. It's actually more often the parents these days, the kids have been taught a bit, than it is the kids with the stalking on social media. But be aware, stranger abductions are rare. It's usually a family friend or an acquaintance. It's typically not the classic stranger scenario. Terrifying, but they're rare.
All right, Matt, I want to try to squeeze in 2 more here. The next one, hopefully I can understand this right and relay it to you correctly. So in relation to the username that you initially identified on the dark web, and then you linked that to open web accounts, what additional identifying markers did you see that allowed you to conclude that that username was the same individual?
My role, so some of this would have been over to law enforcement. My role was, I found a username with a lot of criminality, and I was able to sufficiently prove that it was an uncommon, unique username on the clear web. The clear web findings in terms of his sexualities and fetishes and interests were very consistent with the dark web. Then the social media provided names and locations, as I showed. That was put in a report for law enforcement professionals to go, and I made it, they call it parallel reconstruction. So outside of the subscription tool, which I annotate, this was a subscription tool, but here's screenshots. They were able to go through and more or less replicate my investigation on their own and get a court order. Then search warrants come and subpoenas. They find possession of CSAM and they find the message logs, and then bada boom, bada bing.
All right, last one, because this question seemed pretty consistent from about 6 or 7 different individuals, is whether they're a US citizen or, and this is me trying to group a few questions together here, whether they're a US citizen or they're in another country attending this webinar right now, how can people get involved to help support this type of work, the stuff that you do? What would you recommend to them as starting points to getting involved?
Oh, well, and that warms my heart, and thank you. And we wouldn't be anything without really good, it's everyday people, by the way. So the reality of the landscape is law enforcement are super, and they are professionals, but there are never going to be enough of them to go around. We obviously don't want civilians meaning well, but doing reckless things and endangering investigations of their people themselves. For the citizens, I'd be in that boat. I'm a citizen, I'm a civilian. If you're really interested in learning how to become involved, you can always use our contact us form on the ATII website, followmoneyfightslavery.org. And that's the best way to get started. And we can look at doing intakes and interviews from that point. But please use the contact us. That's our central forum through the anti-human trafficking website, followmoneyfightslavery.org, and love to hear from you. And thank you for your interest. Much appreciated.
Okay, Tim, thank you for dropping the link to Matt's organization site. And just to, be respectful and mindful of everyone's time here. Matt, again, thank you so much for your time in the presentation. Thank you everyone who took the time to attend. You will get a follow-up email. You will have contact information should you have any additional questions for Matt or the Bluestone team, and there will be a recording available if you need to go back and rewatch or portions that you missed. And then Matt, the questions that we were unable to get to, I will email those to you, and then you can connect directly with that individual, because some did come in at the last minute that I think were pretty good. We just don't have time to get to them. So it's 2 p.m. I appreciate everybody's time. Have a great weekend. And remember, that guy is in jail. So happy Friday.
And one more thing, if I may, Ryan, sir.
Yes, sir.
Just remember, you've got the ball and you are in control, and you can win. You will win if you so try. This is not an insurmountable fight. We're looking at the worst case scenario right now. There are many, 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 many crimes that never got committed that were prevented because of good old-fashioned parenting. I am a parent right now. I'm wearing my parent hat. I'm not a Superman. You can do this. Just be present, engage in your kids' lives, trust communication. Trust me, we can win. We will win. We're just gonna have to stick together and work hard. But parenting 101. I hope you feel good about that. I know people are like, I'm glad I don't know what you know. And I'm like, but if you knew what I knew, yeah, you might know bad stuff, but you might know how winnable this is. And with that comes power and levity. So I just want to say have a safe and lovely weekend. And thank you to everyone that came out today. And thank you to my friends, my dear friends with Bluestone. Appreciate you all.
Thanks, Matt. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. Cheers.